During the Vietnam War, an entire platoon vanished deep inside a Lin, one of the densest and least explored jungle regions in the country. There were no gunshots, no explosion, no signs of a fight. Their last radio message came through at 11:17 p.m., panicked and broken by static. The sky turned black. We're going down. I repeat, we're going down. And then, the transmission dissolved into silence. When the search teams reached the area the next morning, they found something that defied the logic of war. The treetops were scorched from above, as if touched by a vertical blast of heat. But the ground was untouched, cool and silent. Gear lay abandoned in a perfect circle. Weapons were aligned as if placed carefully on the ground. Radios were dropped mid-use, and every wristwatch, every single one, was frozen at the exact same time, 11:17 p.m. Before we continue, make sure you subscribe, leave a like, and share this video with someone who loves mysteries. It helps the channel grow and keeps these stories alive. The disappearance became known as the A Lin vanishing. To the villagers, a Lin was a forbidden zone long before American boots ever touched its soil. They avoided it not because of war, but because of something older, stories of a place where the air felt too heavy, where echoes didn't match the voice that created them, and where the forest seemed to breathe on its own. Soldiers who passed through the region sometimes reported strange feelings. An oppressive quiet, sudden pressure in their skulls, shadows that didn't match the movement of branches. Only a few dared to talk about it openly. Most preferred to forget. But the truth begins with one man, Corporal Michael Harper, radio operator of the 25th Infantry Division. Harper was disciplined, alert, and experienced with unpredictable terrain, but a Lin shook him in ways no battlefield ever had. He wrote about rain falling only in perfect circular patches, about whispers repeating his name back at him with the wrong timing, and about seeing silhouettes gliding between the trees, silhouettes that left no footprints. His warnings were dismissed as stress, exhaustion, or nerves. A week later, Harper and 28 other men were deployed straight into the heart of a Lin for a reconnaissance mission that would mark their final day on Earth as anyone knew it. Lieutenant Robert Mallory, the man leading the platoon, was known for his composure. He had faced artillery fire, surprise ambushes, and nights so dark that even breathing felt dangerous. Yet something about a Lin unsettled him. As they moved deeper into the jungle, Harper noticed Mallory constantly looking upward, scanning the sky through gaps in the canopy. Not as if he feared aircraft or enemies, but as if he expected something unnatural above them. The silence grew thicker as they advanced. No insects, no birds, not even the distant hum of the jungle. It felt as if the entire environment was holding itself still, waiting for something to unfold. At 9:44 p.m., the impossible happened. The sky above them darkened instantly, not like a cloud passing, not like night arriving. It was clean, sudden, geometric, a perfect blot of darkness, devoid of texture or shape, spreading across the canopy. Harper later described it as a hole in reality, though he would never have the chance to explain it further. The darkness moved sideways, gliding with deliberate intent, without any sound. The men froze, a deep, crushing pressure wrapped around their chests. One soldier fell to his knees gasping, claiming he was being pulled downward, though the ground beneath him was dry and solid. Harper reached for his radio. It hissed violently, screeching with unnatural static. Mallory shouted orders to retreat, but the sound around them seemed muffled, as if swallowed by the air itself. Moments later, the transmission that would become infamous was recorded. The sky turned black. We're going down. Those were the last words ever heard from the platoon. The rescue unit arrived at sunrise. The scene looked staged, almost ritualistic. Rifles were placed neatly on the ground. Backpacks were untouched. Canteens were still full. There was no trace of the men. No blood. No disturbance in the soil. No dragging marks. No evidence of movement. The only anomaly was a 5-meter-wide circle where the ground felt unnaturally dense, as if compacted by something enormous. Compasses malfunctioned within that circle. Birds refused to fly overhead. The area emitted a metallic smell that faded within hours. Villagers were questioned but offered only one answer: a Lin does not forgive. Translators struggled to understand their meaning. To some, a Lin was a spirit. To others, it was a place where the earth and sky touched. One elder refused to even say the name out loud. He whispered, "Do not look up. When the sky descends and the ground rises, the middle swallows." The soldiers dismissed it as superstition. But later, investigators would realize this warning aligned disturbingly well with the radio static recorded that night. Weeks later, analysts studying the abandoned gear made a chilling discovery. Every wristwatch, different brands, different models, had stopped at the exact same second. 11:17 and 48 seconds PM magnetism could explain mechanical interference, but not the burn marks found on the treetops, nor the complete silence recorded before the transmission cut out. A technician attempting to clean the static from the last radio message slowed it down and claimed he could distinguish 3 faint words in ancient Vietnamese. "Do not look up." The case should have ended there, sealed forever as another wartime mystery. But fate had other plans. In 1979, a man walked into a veterans clinic in San Francisco. He looked frail, sunken, and terrified. He claimed to be Private Dennis Keller, one of the missing men. Medical staff were shocked. Keller had been officially declared dead years earlier. But the man knew things only Keller could have known. Names, operations, personal details. When questioned about where he had been for a decade, he trembled violently. "I didn't die," he whispered. "I came back." He spoke slowly, as if each memory hurt. "We didn't go down. Something rose to meet us. Something without form. Something that spoke without sound." When asked what the place was, he shook his head, crying. "There's no up, no down, just floating inside something's throat." He repeated the same phrase for hours afterward. "The sky turned black. The sky turned black." Doctors noted something else. Keller had not aged a single day since his disappearance. Scars he had before the war were gone. His voice had a faint echo, a double resonance. Under specific lighting, his shadow failed to appear. The government classified his file immediately. In 2019, explorers found an old military radio buried just beneath the soil of a Lin. The device looked nearly untouched by time. A tape was still inside. When played, it revealed a message not included in the original report. "It's opening. My God. It's opening." Then came a roar, something between metal bending and the earth groaning, followed by silence. That discovery reignited global interest in the case. A retired satellite technician came forward, anonymously, confessing that 10 days before the platoon vanished, a military satellite recorded a perfect circular blackout over a Lin. For 12 full seconds, sensors reported no light, no heat, no movement, as if the region had been erased from existence. Then, in an instant, a blinding pulse snapped back into place. Harper's recovered journal added yet another layer of dread. His entries described the jungle behaving like a living entity, whispers with no source, footprints that didn't compress the soil, shifts in the air like something enormous was passing just above them. The final entry, written 37 minutes before every watch stopped, read, "If we hear it again, do not look up." Scientists studying the region where Harper and his platoon vanished eventually discovered something they couldn't explain. The soil inside the 5-meter circle had a gravitational fluctuation so subtle it would have gone unnoticed by ordinary instruments, yet strong enough to affect compasses and distort radio waves. It was as if the ground itself shifted weight, becoming denser at certain hours of the night. One physicist suggested that the men hadn't been pulled downward at all. Instead, reality around them might have bent or dipped, creating the sensation of descent while the physical world reorganized itself. The theory sounded absurd until new evidence emerged. In 2021, researchers monitoring a LIN installed a series of motion detectors, seismographs, and gravitational sensors around the perimeter of the forbidden zone. Their goal was to prove once and for all that the phenomenon was natural, not supernatural. For 2 days, the instruments recorded nothing unusual. Then, on the third night, at precisely 11:17 p.m., everything changed. The sky did not darken gradually. It snapped into absolute darkness, as if an invisible dome had lowered over the jungle. The air thickened until breathing felt like inhaling water. Light from the researchers' flashlights dimmed, not by losing power, but as if something was swallowing the photons themselves. Dr. Nguyen Bao, the lead researcher, wrote later that the darkness was geometric, a shape without edges but with presence, something that felt too intentional to be natural. A deep metallic hum reverberated through the soil, vibrating their equipment and making their bones ache. Then, in a flash, a white pulse of light flickered in the exact center of the clearing, bright, cold, and utterly silent. When the darkness lifted seconds later, the ground in the center had sunk by 2 centimeters in a perfectly uniform circle. Reviewing the thermal footage afterward revealed a single frame that none of them could explain. For 1/30th of a second, a humanoid silhouette stood in the center of the clearing. No heat signature, no outline of facial features, just a figure of absolute zero, colder than any natural environment on Earth. The moment the light returned, the figure vanished. This discovery led investigators to revisit the classified file on Private Dennis Keller. The notes inside were more disturbing than anyone expected. Doctors observed that Keller's physiological responses were abnormal. He flinched at frequencies inaudible to humans. He spoke with an almost imperceptible echo, as if a second voice lagged milliseconds behind the first. His pupils failed to dilate correctly under bright light. One doctor remarked privately, "He came back, but I don't think all of him returned." Keller's hypnosis session, long buried in sealed archives, was released in 2020. Under trance, his descriptions grew even more unsettling. He said there was no up or down, only suspension, as if floating inside a vast throat that contracted and expanded around them. He said there were voices without bodies, faces that shifted shape based on what the soldiers feared most, sounds that felt like they were happening inside their skulls rather than outside. When the psychiatrist asked how he returned, Keller hesitated. Then he whispered, "I didn't return. They pushed me out, like spitting something out." When pressed about who they were, he started shaking violently, begging to be awakened. Around this time, a local guide named Pham Dung reported a chilling encounter in the same region. He was not a soldier and knew nothing of the vanished platoon, but his story aligned perfectly with decades of strange events. Pham claimed he heard his own name whispered among the leaves, even though he was alone. The air vibrated with a low hum that seemed to come from the ground, not the sky. A glow formed in the center of the clearing, not illuminating the jungle but merely existing, like an eye observing him. When he stepped closer, he saw a man standing still as stone, motionless, rigid, like a statue made of flesh. When Pham shined his flashlight, the figure turned. His face was smooth, like wax. No eyes, no mouth, only skin. Then, in a soft, unnatural voice, it spoke Vietnamese. "You should not be here. And before Pham could run, the figure dissolved like smoke. Pham later realized his watch had stopped at the same cursed time, 11:17 p.m. A team of independent researchers began piecing all the incidents together, from the 1969 disappearance to Keller's impossible return, from the satellite blackout to the gravitational fluctuations, from Pham's encounter to the thermal silhouette. They proposed a theory more terrifying than anything the military had considered. A Lin, they argued, was not a haunted jungle. It was a boundary, a thin interval between two layers of reality. Something pressed against that boundary periodically, trying to open it. And each time, the opening grew stronger, longer, and more violent. They called it the A-Lin cycle. Meanwhile, the newly discovered tape from 2019 underwent deeper audio analysis. The rumbling in the background, once thought to be static, contains subharmonic patterns matching the sound of metal under enormous stress, like steel beams bending or a massive gate being forced open. When the audio was sped up 30 times, faint human voices appeared underneath, overlapping in different languages, as if trapped in the distortions of time itself. Some were English, some were ancient Vietnamese, some didn't resemble any known language at all. But the clearest phrase, repeated over and over, was, "It's opening." Documents declassified in 2021 revealed another horrifying detail. The U.S. military had encountered a similar phenomenon months before the platoon vanished. A reconnaissance aircraft passing over a Lin reported instruments malfunctioning violently, followed by 10 seconds of total blackout. No visibility, no altitude readings, no communication. The pilot said it felt like flying into a mouth. The incident was classified instantly. The platoon sent weeks later was not on a routine mission. They were sent to find the source of that anomaly. Lieutenant Mallory, it turned out, had been briefed about this earlier incident. That explained his behavior in the jungle. His constant glances at the sky, his silence, his unspoken fear. Mallory recognized the signs before anyone else. He knew they were walking into something that wasn't an enemy, wasn't a trap, wasn't even alive in the normal sense. Something that lay beneath and above, between and around. Something that waited for the right moment in time. That moment was always the same, 11:17 p.m. As researchers dug deeper, they uncovered accounts dating back centuries. Locals spoke of people vanishing on moonless nights, often accompanied by unnatural silence and a deep rumble beneath the earth. They believed a Lin was the place where the world thinned, where the sky dipped, and where the earth rose to meet it. Over time, stories of the devouring middle became folklore, dismissed by outsiders as superstition. But every story shared eerie similarities with the modern disappearances. Sudden silence, oppressive air, geometric darkness, and the unmistakable sense of being observed from above and below simultaneously. In 2023, a team of explorers entered a Lin with state-of-the-art equipment to capture definitive proof of the phenomenon. They never returned. Only one piece of gear was recovered, a small audio recorder found half buried in the soil near the center of the clearing. The recording began with laughter, nervous chatter, and the crunch of leaves underfoot. Then the tone shifted. The microphone picked up a deep, suffocating pressure, like being submerged underwater. One voice whispered, "Do you feel that?" Another said, "The air, it's pulling." The metallic hum grew louder, vibrating through the recorder. Then came a voice, clear, chilling, and identical to the one captured in 1969. "It's opening." The recording erupted into distorted screams, static, and an explosive pop. 3 minutes later, the final whisper echoed faintly, 11:17. Investigators listening to the tape agreed on one thing. Whatever had taken the platoon decades ago was still there, and it was getting stronger. The final phase of the investigation into the alien phenomenon began not with soldiers, scientists, or explorers, but with a young researcher named Adrian Holt. Holt was a physicist who specialized in gravitational anomalies, and he was obsessed with the idea that certain places on Earth acted like thin spots, openings where the normal rules of physics were weakened. When he heard about the events surrounding Lynn, the stopped watches, the geometric darkness, the crushing pressure in the air, he believed immediately that the jungle was one of those places. Holt arrived in Vietnam in late 2023 and traveled with a small team to the outskirts of the restricted region. They couldn't enter the core without military authorization, but Holt had a plan. He deployed dozens of seismic sensors and microgravity detectors around the perimeter, forming a large ring of instruments designed to detect any shifts in the Earth or atmosphere. He had no idea that he would record the most dramatic escalation of the phenomenon ever documented. On the evening of December 28th, Holt and his team were reviewing data inside a makeshift tent when the first sensor registered a sudden drop in gravitational force. It was tiny, barely a fraction of a percent, but it was enough to send a ripple through every instrument in the network. Holt's eyes widened. "It's starting," he whispered. They rushed outside. The jungle was unnaturally silent. The moon overhead dimmed, as if viewed through a thick veil. And then 11:17 p.m., the exact time tied to every disappearance, every radio message, every anomaly in Lynn. The darkness struck instantly. It wasn't gradual like nightfall, it was a blow, a collapse, a blanket of absolute black dropped from above. Holt described it later as a living shadow, something that didn't just block light but consumed it. The air grew heavy, the atmosphere flickering as if reality itself were glitching. A deep resonance rose from the ground, a slow, rhythmic sound like colossal metal plates grating against each other. The sensors around Lynn went wild. Microgravity fluctuated. Magnetic fields spiked erratically. Temperatures plummeted. Holt could feel the pressure on his chest, pushing inward, squeezing his lungs. He staggered and looked toward the center of the jungle. That was when he saw a pulse of white light, cold, sterile, expanding outward like a heartbeat. And in that heartbeat, he saw them. Dozens of silhouettes suspended in the air, motionless, arranged in an impossible circle. Human shapes, some tall, some shorter, some wearing uniforms that looked decades old. Others dressed in civilian clothing from eras long gone. Frost emanated from their bodies, creating wisps of vapor that fell instead of rising. The silhouettes stood at the edges of the pulse, facing outward, like guardians placed around a gate. Holt stumbled backward in shock. The figures didn't move. They didn't breathe. They simply existed like imprints of people trapped between worlds. The light contracted suddenly, pulling inward toward the center. The silhouettes were drawn with it, erased into the collapsing brightness. The darkness thickened, swallowing every shape in an instant. Holt felt the ground beneath him heave upward, as if the earth were trying to inhale. Then came the sound he would never forget, a thunderous metallic snap, like a massive lock being forced open. The atmosphere rippled, Holt's vision blurred, and then everything stopped. The darkness vanished. The jungle returned. The pressure lifted. The world snapped back into place. Holt collapsed to his knees, gasping. The ring of sensors around the perimeter had all shut down at the exact same second, 11:17 and 48 seconds p.m. The same time recorded on the platoon's watches in 1969. The same second their radio transmission had cut off. The same second the explorer's recorder captured the final whisper, 11:17. For Holt, the evidence was undeniable. Something didn't just happen in Lynn, it repeated, it cycled, it grew. And whatever had taken the platoon, whatever had pushed Keller back into the world, whatever manifested as silhouettes of ice-cold human forms, was becoming more active. In his final report, Holt wrote, "A lin is not a location. It is an opening, a threshold. Something presses against it from the other side. Something that understands time. Something that learns." I believe the 1969 disappearance was not an isolated event. It was the beginning of a contact cycle, and the cycle is almost complete. His report, leaked anonymously in early 2024, sparked panic among those familiar with the case. Some believed a lin was a wormhole. Others thought it was a tear in the fabric of reality. And a few whispered a more frightening idea, that a lin was alive, not in the biological sense, but in the sense of a system, a mechanism, an entity that possessed intention and pattern. Further analysis of Holt's sensor data revealed something even more disturbing. The gravitational waves recorded that night matched patterns found in collapsing stars, in theoretical models of black holes, and in advanced simulations of dimensional rifts. But the signal was wrong in one crucial way. It didn't behave like a collapse. It behaved like an inhale, a drawing in, a gathering of energy, not a release. This meant a lin wasn't closing. It was preparing to open fully. In the months following Holt's discovery, more strange events occurred. Villagers reported hearing their names whispered in the wind. A hiker claimed he saw a man in a U.S. Army uniform walking aimlessly in the jungle, only for the man to look at him with a face so pale and smooth it resembled wax. The hiker ran, and when he looked back, the figure was gone. Local authorities dismissed the sighting, but photographs from the hiker's phone showed a faint outline in the trees. Tall, humanoid, featureless. Meanwhile, in a lab far from Vietnam, audio engineers continued analyzing the 2019 tape. The subharmonics were unlike anything found in natural or human-made phenomena. When isolated and layered, the frequencies produced a chilling effect, almost like voices speaking in unison, like a chorus calling from beneath the earth. The words were incomprehensible, but the tone was unmistakable. Longing, calling, beckoning. One audio specialist, after listening for nearly an hour, quit the project entirely. His resignation letter had only one sentence. "It was calling me by name." By early 2025, the world had forgotten the story, as people always do. But the jungle had not. A lin remained quiet, patient. The anomaly lay dormant, like a creature holding its breath. But scientists who monitored gravitational readings around the region began noticing faint fluctuations at random hours, small, almost imperceptible, but unmistakably similar to the patterns detected at 11:17 p.m. The intervals between these fluctuations were shortening. One day, perhaps soon, the opening would no longer be a moment. It would be permanent. Generations of villagers had feared this possibility. Soldiers had died because of it. Keller had returned broken, carrying pieces of a place that did not obey time. Explorers had vanished into it. Holt had seen shadows of the lost suspended like frozen echoes. And all the signs pointed toward a single truth. A lin was waiting, watching, growing. The final page of Holt's leaked notes contained one last message, scrawled hastily as if he wrote it moments before something interrupted him. The message read, "The cycle is accelerating. It will open again. And when it does, it won't stop." Below that line were two numbers, 1117, and a date 1 year in the future. The implication was clear. Whatever lived beyond the threshold was preparing to cross. And this time it would not be satisfied with a single platoon, or a handful of explorers, or a lone soldier spat back into the world. The next opening would be wide and permanent. The story ends not with an answer, but with a warning. If you ever find yourself near the jungles of a lin, and the world suddenly grows silent, and the air grows heavy, and the sky above you turns unnaturally dark, do not look up. Do not listen to the whispers. Do not move toward the light that does not illuminate. Because if the cycle completes, the last message ever recorded in that jungle will become a prophecy echoed across the world. It's opening, and this time something will come through. If you like this video, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more.